Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on the occasion of the World Environment Day. I would request Shri Bijal Shah, IAS, Director, Gujarat Energy Development Agency, to give the welcome address.
Welcome to the esteemed audience and my warm greetings on the occasion of the World Environment Day. My special welcome to respected Sri Haider sir, Professor Pandey and Professor Shukla, who two are the domain experts on today's theme of biodiversity. Now I would request uh, S.J. Haider sir, the Principal Secretary, Climate Change Department, Government of Gujarat, to continue. Please, sir.
Dear friends, greetings to all of you on the occasion of World Environment Day. At the outset, let me welcome all of you to this webinar. I am really indebted to all of you for having made it convenient to attend this webinar. As all of us know, World Environment Day offers a global platform for a very noble cause which is dear to all of us. Individuals are exhorted to think about the way they consume, businesses to develop greener models, manufacturers to produce sustainably, governments to safeguard the conservation of natural resources, educators to inspire students to live in harmony with the earth, and the youth to become protectors of a green future. The theme of this year's World Environment Day is biodiversity. Hence, the topic of today's webinar, biodiversity and climate change. Both essentially happen to be urgent and existential concerns. Recent events of coronavirus pandemic, cyclone Umpan in Bay of Bengal, cyclone Nisarg in the Arabian Sea, forest fires in Australia, locust infestations across East Africa and West Asia are sending messages loud and clear about the interdependence of humans and the webs of life in which we exist. The present COVID-19 pandemic has also made us think and act comprehensively towards sustainable development. Acknowledging due importance to global climate concerns, Gujarat established an independent department for climate change under the visionary leadership of the then Honorable Chief Minister and presently our Honorable Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi. Recently, our department completed 10 years of its establishment. The government of Gujarat, at the highest level of administration, is committed to building a sustainable and climate resilient future and enabling a low carbon pathway for Gujarat's economic growth that would meet people's aspirations with equity and inclusiveness. Our department is working under the direct guidance of Honorable Chief Minister Sri Vijay Rupani. As all of us know, India has communicated the nationally determined contributions to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change under the Paris Agreement. It is important to note that our country and the state are suitably aligning their climate commitments with UN Sustainable Development Goals for 2030. The Sustainable Development Goals are at once a universal agreement to craft an equal, just, and secure world for the people, the planet, and prosperity by 2030. Considering the impacts of global warming and climate change on our economy and our society, the state has formulated a range of policies, including solar, wind, small hydel, waste to energy, etc., and programs that have the potential to counter the challenges of climate change while ensuring achievement of resilient sustainable development objectives. Gujarat State Action Plan on Climate Change comprises 9 thematic areas, namely agriculture, water resources, health, forests and biodiversity, sea level rise, and coastal infrastructure, energy efficiency and renewable energy, urban development, vulnerable communities, and green jobs. Now it is being revisited with further targets and objectives set under the nationally determined contributions of India. Presently, IIM Ahmedabad and IIT Gandhinagar are helping our department in developing the revised version of the State Action Plan on Climate Change. Now, very briefly, allow me to touch upon some of the initiatives which have been taken by the state government. Green budget. For the last 3 years, we are presenting a green budget of Gujarat by dovetailing activities of various line departments related to climate change adaptation and mitigation. A provision of the order of 6,000 crore has been made under climate change schemes by 18 other departments of the state government in the budget of the financial year 2020-21. Renewable energy. Gujarat happens to be one of the leading states in the sector of renewable energy and has, I've already said, announced various policies to promote use of renewable energy. As a result, 7,504 megawatt of wind energy projects, 2,958 megawatt of solar energy projects, comprising 532 megawatt of rooftop and 2,426 megawatt of ground-mounted have already been commissioned by March 2020. Total renewable energy installed in Gujarat, including wind, solar, biomass, and mini, has surpassed 10,600 megawatt approximately. We are also promoting electric vehicles, as you all know, and we are also into energy efficiency. We have also developed a framework of climate change fund for Gujarat to support smaller size of climate change adaptation and mitigation projects at the grassroots level. We have also availed ourselves of the National Adaptation Fund of the Government of India. Very recently, now it has been quite some time now, a joint statement, we signed a covenant of mayors of Gujarat with the international, with European Union, and based on this joint statement, 8 cities of Gujarat, namely Ahmedabad, Surat, Vadodara, Rajkot, Bhavnagar, Jamnagar, Junagadh, and Gandhinagar, signed an MOU with the European Union and the International Urban Cooperation and formed the Covenant of Mayors, which is being taken to its logical conclusion in right earnest. I wouldn't like to take much of your time on this occasion. We are very glad and we feel indebted to note once again the presence of senior experts like Shri P.R. Shukla, who happens to be the co-chair of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, Dr. C.N. Pandey, Professor IIT, and I don't know, Mr. Panagiotis Karamanos, Team Leader, International Urban Cooperation, European Union, will also, if he has joined, then I welcome Mr. Karamanos also, and I believe it must be early in the morning there in Greece, and we are really happy to have you here on board with us. All of you have been kind enough to agree to enlighten us on certain important issues and facets of climate change and biodiversity. I'm pretty sure that your presentations will be very helpful in increasing our understanding of this complex subject. I'm also thankful to 250 odd participants and delegates who have been kind enough to join this important webinar. I thank you once again for joining this webinar. Let us confirm our pledge to preserve the Mother Earth and our precious environment. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words. Now we will have a small audiovisual movie of Gujarat. It's about 6 minutes. So please join to see this small audio visual clip, and then we will have a small presentation by Mr. Panagiotis.
advocacy in mitigation and adaptation of climate change. Having multiple books on the subject, is determined to bring about the changes required. Must do it single-handedly.
Set ambitious targets. By 2030, we will reduce emissions by 33 to 35% of 2005 levels and produce 40% of our power from non-fossil fuels.
Honorable Sri Modi, recognizing the threat, established a full-fledged Department of Climate Change in 2009. When he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, the most progressive state of the land of Pandey and Sardar Pandey, with a proactive leadership, Gujarat is poised to maintain its vanguard position in addressing the concerns of global warming and climate change. The present Chief Minister of Gujarat, Sri Vijay, in emphasizing good governance, highlighted the importance of four pillars: transparent, sensitive, decisive, and progressive government. Gujarat, in compliance with the National Action Plan on Climate Change, formulated the State Action Plan on Climate Change to effectively tackle the global concern by recommending multi-dimensional measures incorporating India's nationally determined contributions made under the Paris Agreement to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and keeping in view the Sustainable Development Goals 2030. To support the vision, Gujarat has implemented several renewable policies and schemes. Gujarat Solar Power Policy 2015, Gujarat Wind Power Policy 2016, Gujarat Small Hydro Policy 2016, Gujarat Waste to Energy Policy 2016, Gujarat Wind Solar Hybrid Policy 2018, and Residential Solar Rooftop Scheme 2019. Several mitigation and adaptation measures have been undertaken in the last decade, encompassing sectors such as energy, industries, water, agriculture, disaster management, solid waste management, health, and conservation of mangrove, biodiversity, and wetlands. Results of these measures have been extremely good. Gujarat is the proud custodian of world's first Panagiotis solar power plant, Asia's first solar farm at China. Suitable land has been identified at Korea, Kutch, and Banaskantha for developing a large-scale renewable energy farm. Gujarat has the highest residential solar rooftop installations in India. Gujarat has an installed capacity of nearly 10,000 megawatts for renewable energy, an extremely impressive 30% of total installed capacity of power generation. Gujarat also promotes energy efficiency in industrial machinery, water pumps, domestic appliances, and star ratings on appliances. Electric vehicles and lithium-ion power storage systems are being encouraged in Gujarat. These include subsidy schemes for two-wheelers, three-wheelers, these organizations as a signal but not climate change is a victor Gujarat summit. Also effectively for example the National Adaptation Fund for Climate Change and the National Mission Strategic Knowledge for Climate Change with the support of the Gujarat Ecological Education and Research Foundation, Energy and Petrochemicals Department, and Climate Change Department of the government have formulated several policies from time to time to efficiently harness renewable energy. Gujarat has been climate actions to obtain a budget since 2016, which comprises schemes of 99 departments regarding climate action. Each cities of Gujarat and the climate change department have signed an MOU with the European Union International Urban Cooperation and formulated common mechanism development for climate and energy, which ultimately promotes resilient activities in the urban area. Gujarat's relentless efforts have won the state countless awards and medails, consider friendships rather than resources. Let us attempt to normal connection and expand that love.
Now, I request Mr. Panagiotis, Team Leader, International Urban Cooperation, to give his remarks and a brief presentation.
Thank you very much. I think Shukla, yes, shall speak first.
Mr. Panagiotis, your screen is visible now.
Yes, you do. You hear me well?
Yes.
So next 7 to 8 minutes, I will show you some thoughts about climate, the international cooperation program and related to biodiversity to some degree, and also indicate some future opportunities for cooperation. Starting with a simple recent statement that actually brings together the two recent global challenges of climate change and COVID-19. But what are the similarities between these two crises? Both of them rely on complex science, they require international cooperation, they do test system resilience, they are based, of course, on political leadership and state intervention, and action, whatever action it is, has to be based on public support. So the COVID crisis has provided some useful hints on what to do and how to address the climate change crisis. And the European Union has a long history of cooperation with India and has a number of projects. And today I will highlight some of the developments regarding international urban cooperation, which is a program that started in 2016 and is based on two key components. One is city-to-city cooperation on sustainable urban development, and this is based on exchange visits between 12 Indian cities and 12 European cities, and the development of a local action plan on a topic of interest and priority. The second component is related to the climate activities based on the Global Covenant of Mayors, and the core contribution is the development of climate action plans. Regarding the city-to-city cooperation, just 3 examples to showcase the importance of this cooperation. Surat, for example, and Rotterdam have been at the forefront of the developments, and I think it's important to commend both the governments of Gujarat and Surat in this respect for the design of a pilot project, a water plaza to manage heavy rainwater and create a recreation area. A number of Greek cities will be cooperating with Leh regarding the promotion of sustainable tourism, including biodiversity protection, while Udaipur and Aarhus in Denmark are working on a sludge-to-energy pilot facility at the sewage treatment plant. Most importantly, this cooperation is related to the Global Covenant of Mayors, which is a first-of-its-kind initiative and the largest global alliance of cities leading the fight against climate change. And it takes a comprehensive view as it looks at quality of life, economic opportunities, and social issues. But what is important, and you can see that on the right side of your screen, is that there are already 16 Indian cities that have committed to the Global Covenant of Mayors. And what is interesting here that is half of them are from the state of Gujarat. And this shows the dedication and motivation of the state regarding this issue. And building on the statement that was made earlier by Mr. Haider, the Covenant of Mayors of Gujarat for Climate and Energy is a very important initiative. That is a joint initiative between the Climate Change Department and the European Union International Urban Cooperation Project that was launched in 2019 with a contribution and commitment of 8 Gujarat cities. And these are the cities that we're working with, as well as others in India, for the development of climate action plans. Surat, Vadodara, Gandhinagar, Bhavnagar, Gangtok, Panji, and Kochi are part of the climate action plans. And these action plans provide a comprehensive approach to the challenges of climate change. Now, I do not want to go through the specifics, but most of you will know what are the components. And in many cases, some of these components have to do with biodiversity as well when it is relevant. Along those lines, I would also like to stress the importance of a very recent release, the Financing Manual for Financing Sustainable and Climate Resilient Urban Development in India, which provides information to urban local bodies in Gujarat, in India, and across the world about opportunities for financing their projects. This cooperation has been very fruitful, but it's not only about action plans or manuals. It's also about personal relationships, it's about building strong ties and cooperation. And I'm highlighting here a very recent visit that took place in Brussels and Milan at the end of 2019, which provided the opportunity for India and also the state of Gujarat to highlight the importance of the cooperation and what are the needs for building ties with Europe. And this is very, very important because this type of cooperation leads to new projects and new opportunities. And closing my presentation, I only want to highlight the importance of continuity and opportunities for future projects. So what we'll see in the next few months, in the next few years, is that the Global Covenant of Mayors will continue to place high importance across the world, but also in India with a new project as of 2021. The international urban cooperation will continue in a new form as international urban and regional cooperation, including a number of European cities and a number of thematic concepts. In the next few months, we expect that the European Business and Technology Center will work with cities in Gujarat to design projects on waste, water, or mobility. And finally, the ongoing India-EU urban partnership will be based on the development of a metropolitan lab for specific Gujarat cities. And some of these projects will also incorporate the priority themes for the cities in India and Gujarat, and some of them may also be related to biodiversity. So this highlights not just the importance that the EU places on India and Gujarat, but also the opportunities for cooperation on climate change. On behalf of the International Urban Cooperation Project and the team of Indian experts that we're working on this project, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to contribute to this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Panagiotis, for your very brief and interesting presentation. We will take the question and answer at the end of the all three presentations. So before we go further, I would like to welcome Professor C.N. Pandey. C.N. Pandey sir was Chief Principal Conservator of Forest of Gujarat and Head of Forest Force, and he has a very long experience in biodiversity, wildlife, and nature conservation sector. And sir is presently a faculty in Indian Institute of Technology, Gandhinagar. Now I will request Professor C.N. Pandey to kindly address this webinar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shwetal sir. I hope I'm heard there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is my screen visible to you?
Yes, sir. It's visible. Yes.
Okay.
Please, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
Thank you very much.
You have around 20-25 minutes time, sir.
Okay. I thought it's about 30. Anyway, I'll do it in time. Right. So it's exactly 12. So good morning and good afternoon to everybody. And in the beginning, I'd like to compliment and thank the Climate Change Department of Government of Gujarat particularly Mr. S.J. Haider, who is the Principal Secretary of the department. I'd also like to compliment and thank JEDA for this initiative. This indeed is a very good and very important webinar on a very serious issue. And I'm very glad that it touches upon biodiversity, touches upon climate change, touches upon urban development, and so many related issues. Today, we are indeed at a stage where these things are going to govern the life and the life of the future generations for many centuries. And it's very important for us to have serious discussions about biodiversity and climate change. I'm thankful to the organizers for giving me an opportunity to share my views with you. And in the next 20 minutes, which have been allotted to me, I'll raise the biodiversity related issues and their relationship to the climate change and other environmental issues. So I'll first like to tell you that biodiversity is in fact the total variability in all the life forms. And to my opinion, the real test of sustainable development is how well we are able to conserve various species. The actual test of our sustainable development is how rich we are in biodiversity. If biodiversity survives, we as human beings survive. If we are not able to conserve biodiversity, then our own future is jeopardized. The relationship between the climate change and biodiversity is in fact very obvious because the biodiversity is basically dependent on the climate. The biodiversity, the diversity of species at any place, whether species of flora or fauna, basically depends on abiotic elements like water, like soil type, like temperature, like humidity, and all these things are governed by the climate change forces, and therefore the relationship between climate change and biodiversity is in fact very direct and very obvious. But it is a two-way relationship. It's not only that the climate change affects biodiversity, but it's the biodiversity also which can affect climate change. For instance, if the biodiversity is rich, then we have good forests. If we have good forests and good biodiversity, we have better carbon sequestration, which is going to reduce the rate of climate change or the speed of climate change. Now, I again show you the same thing by this graphic. I again show you the same thing by this graphic, which tells you that we are happy if our healthy systems are happy, if our ecosystems are healthy, and if our ecosystems are healthy, we are bound to have rich biodiversity, and this will lead to sustainable development. However, what is happening is that our high carbon lifestyle is pushing the climate change and is changing the temperature regime and changing the precipitation. This is disturbing all the ecosystems and their abiotic elements and biotic elements both. The climate change forces are directly hitting the biodiversity. Many species are getting directly lost by the biodiversity, and this is basically resulting in reducing our biocapacity. I'll be discussing the biocapacity in some later slides as well. This reduces the carbon sequestration and speeds up climate change forces. And that is how the whole thing is a cyclic spiral phenomenon and is affecting us in many ways. Now, it's not necessary just to discuss the health of the ecosystem. The diversity of the ecosystem is also equally important because the biodiversity basically emanates from the ecosystem diversity. The more number of ecosystems we have, the richer we are in biodiversity. A very important case is that of Gujarat. Gujarat, which is known to the outside world as a state which is a forerunner in industrial development, a forerunner in urban development, and people usually think that there are lots of industries here and big cities and all. But Gujarat is also very rich in biodiversity, and the credit goes to the people of Gujarat and to the government of Gujarat for having conditions where biodiversity is well preserved in spite of Gujarat being a forerunner in industrial and urban development. One of the basic reasons for rich biodiversity in Gujarat is the diversity in ecosystem that the state has. You see, if you can see the rainfall pattern or the rainfall gradient of the state, we have very high rainfall areas where the rainfall can be as high as 2,000 millimeters to it may go up to 400 level in touch and all. And this gradient in rainfall itself creates a diversity in ecosystem. Gujarat has good dense forests in South Gujarat. Gujarat has grassland. In fact, the biggest grassland of Asia is found in Gujarat, which is in Bani in Kutch. Gujarat has saline deserts. Gujarat has wetlands. Many of you will be surprised to know that the total extent of wetlands, including inland and coastal, is in fact highest in Gujarat. And largely it is due to the longest coastline that we have. When we say that Gujarat has a long coastline, it means that we have a number of coastal ecosystems like coral reef ecosystems, mangrove ecosystems. We have a small estuarine ecosystem. Because of this huge and tremendous diversity of ecosystems, Gujarat is rich in biodiversity, which is manifested by its wildlife. Gujarat has so many sanctuaries. Gujarat is a state which has highest area in terms of percentage dedicated to its protected areas or to wildlife protection areas. Gujarat has about 24 national parks, 24 sanctuaries and 4 national parks. And Gujarat has prime species like Asiatic lions. Gujarat has a marine national park, which is India's first marine national park. Gujarat has a coral reef. It is one of the 4 major coral reefs of India. Gujarat's mangrove conservation story is a globally acclaimed success story. So all these things have given Gujarat a very good biodiversity. But nevertheless, Gujarat is facing serious challenges also about conservation of biodiversity. There are many areas where the biodiversity is facing real issues. For example, the Great Indian Bustard in Kutch, and there are so many other species also. Biodiversity is a subject which is endless, and we have always to be conscious about conserving our biodiversity. We have to make very serious efforts still for conserving our biodiversity. Now, the biodiversity story, I like to start with the story of Martha. Martha is a bird, is the passenger pigeon, and the story is very interesting. This bird was in 1850s. This bird was so abundant in North America and Canada. Today, the bird is extinct. It got the last bird, which was named Martha. It was a female bird, died in Cincinnati Zoo in USA on September 1st, 1940. I'm telling this story because many people do not really directly associate their lives with the extinctions which are taking place, the extinctions of biodiversity. There was an observation by Aldo Leopold, which I put on the screen. He observed in 1947, and his observation pertained to some older times. And he writes that men still live who in their youth remember pigeons. Trees still live who in their youth were shaken by a living wind. But a few decades hence, only the oldest oaks will remember, and at long last, only the hills will know. The story of Martha is very interesting and very tragic because only about 4 decades ago, only about 4 decades before it got extinct, there were lakhs and lakhs, in fact, billions of members of flocks which used to fly across the skies of America and Canada. And in a very short time, about 4 decades only, this huge population was hunted. It was hunted for food. It was hunted for commercial use of the meat because it was a cheap and a tasty meat. It's very sad. It's very sad that only in a period of 40 years, this bird, which was having a huge population of billions, was in fact eaten to extinction. If I'm allowed to say, this bird was basically eaten to extinction, mercilessly and relentlessly hunted. So the point that I want to make is that today, if a population of a species is very large, there is no reason to believe that if we are not careful, if we don't have proper plans and proper management strategies, then even if the population is huge today, it may be driven to extinction in a very short time. The populations are indeed very fragile in this sense. Now, you'll be surprised to know that during the last century, 500 major species have been extinct. Major species of flora and fauna have gone extinct. I'm talking about only the major. So of the 10 species which are major and which have been extinct in the last 100 years, I've given a list here. They include the passenger pigeon, which I just talked about. They include the dodo bird, the badger dolphin, the thylacine, also known as the Tasmanian tiger, the pinta tortoise, golden toad, and so many names are there which are getting extinct. And the sad part of it is this, that the nations, the communities, the societies are really not, they don't appear to be really concerned about this huge rate of extinction. I will like to bring here, and this was mentioned by Mr. Haider also, that in the last 1.5 years we have seen raising forests in the Amazon area, and, and then it was followed by the Australian bushfire, where it is said that about 200 billion species, or at least definitely 2 billion species, were lost permanently locally. They became locally extinct. It's a huge loss. But still, the global concern is not really alarming about it. There are not many talks going on about this kind of great loss of biodiversity that has taken place only in the last 2 years. There are some articles, some people have raised voice, some people have raised, some authors have raised voice that the sixth extinction is in its worst form now, and we are in fact going through it. And it appears that the humans will finally find themselves alone on this planet. Now, coming to the issue of extinction, and we are going through the sixth mass extinction, which is largely driven by human beings, largely driven by our our development policies which are unsustainable, and we have to quickly take action so that our development agenda becomes the agenda for sustainable development. We have, we can see here on the screen that we have seen 5 major mass extinctions in the past. The last one we all remember, we have seen in entertainment movies, was the extinction of dinosaurs. And that happened about 6.5 crore years ago by the end of the Cretaceous period. Dinosaurs were huge animals, they were mighty, they were powerful, but they became extinct. Now, the sixth mass extinction is going on, and this is called Anthropocene. Now, I present here one work by Vitosov, and he presented a graph between the rise of global population and the rise in extinction. The surprising correlation between the two graphs clearly shows that the growth of human population, which also means the growth of development, has led to extinction. The rate of extinction has in fact become alarming. And it has become so alarming that people have started estimating as to how many species we are losing per day. There are estimates that it is shocking that there are scientific estimates that about 5 to 150 species are getting lost every day. That means by the time we end this webinar, probably 3-4 species will be permanently extinct from the face of globe. From the face of globe. Now, this period is, as we all know, this period is called Anthropocene because this is one extinction and the only first extinction which is predominantly dominated by one species, which is human being, is predominantly driven by species. Now, there's another estimate by E.O. Wilson, which is a noted ecologist, and he says that in fact we are losing 3 species every hour permanently. The rate of loss in this extinction is 100 to 1,000 times higher than the earlier extinction. These all have been evaluated. Now, the issues about the biodiversity extinction is not really loss of species, but one of the basic issues that many of these species are being lost before they are identified, before they are named, before their qualities and before their virtues have been evaluated. And it's going to be a serious loss because there is a serious loss of potential gene bank that could be useful to mankind in future for various things. Now, the present biodiversity estimate ranges from 1 million to up to even 1 trillion, but the most scientists agree that there are about 100 million species. The point that I'm making here is that even an estimate about the total number of species even today ranges from 1 million to 1 trillion. So that shows our actual ignorance about the biodiversity that we are having on Earth. Now, the issue many times are raised as to why should we really be bothered about conserving biodiversity. There are so many species which are perceived to be harmful to us. For example, if there are snakes around, why should we keep the snakes? For example, if there are many insects around us which may be harmful to us, why should we be keeping them? There are many issues, First of all, is our interdependence. No species on Earth can really survive alone. We all depend on each other. We may be intelligent, we may be rational, we may be mighty, but we depend on small, weak species as well. Even today, there's hardly anything that the technology produces which we eat directly. every food is produced by nature, every food is produced by some ecosystem or the other, and this comes from the biodiversity. We still depend on ecosystem productions, ecosystem services very heavily, almost 100% if I may be allowed to say that. But if we say this, then we probably are saying that the biodiversity should be preserved only for mankind. That's a very human centric way of thinking and not a very ethical one. So we should conserve biodiversity for ethical reasons and for higher ethical values that the planet is given by nature to all the species. Every species has right to survive. And many of our regulations, many of our laws have also been based on these ethical principles that the earth belongs to every species and every species has a right to survive on earth. So with these principles in mind, we really need to bother about the biodiversity which we live with. Now, the interdependence of species is important because the more complex food chain we have, the more are the chances of survival of ecosystems. As we can see that on the left of the screen, there is a food chain which is a little simpler, and on the right, there is a food chain which is very little complex. And in the complex food chain, we have, if one species get extinct, then there are so many other species which take place in the food chain, and the ecosystem survives. And if the ecosystem survives, then we get ecosystem services like fresh water, like fresh air, like regulation of the temperature, humidity, and all these ecosystem services are available as long as the ecosystem is healthy, and this is a function of biodiversity. Now, the human dependence on biodiversity is very obvious and very direct, and I have just listed some of these things. That it leads to it gives ecological services, climate proofing, gives food, fuel, powder, fiber, gums, honey, etc., medicines, and all. Now, let us come to some issues where we are directly dependent on the biodiversity. When I say this, I really don't mean that these are the only things about which we depend on biodiversity. The first is our dependence on flora. In fact, if you look at the Ayurveda, which is one of the most ancient healing system and medical system and healthcare system, it basically depends on the biodiversity of flora. It depends on our floristic diversity. Now, in the present times, we have seen that with the tragic invasion of coronavirus, there is a special relevance for this Ayurvedic knowledge because the modern medicine system has yet not come up with the medicine for coronavirus. And you must be knowing that so many people are now taking to Ayurvedic medicines, which are basically derived from our herbal biodiversity. Now, in fact, all traditional medical systems depend upon our biodiversity, whether it is flora or whether it is fauna. Now, I'll give one or two examples. The most striking example of the use of flora as medicine is the case of cinchona. And cinchona gives us quinine, and from which the drug for malaria has been made. For many centuries, in fact, human beings fought malaria by using cinchona, which was derived from our floristic diversity. It was later on that chemically the drug was chemically synthesized, and today we are not taking it from the natural diversity, not natural biodiversity, but we are certainly inspired by the traditional knowledge that we have about the quinine or cinchona. Similarly, is the case of raffia, from which reciperin, an important alkaloid, has been derived, which is widely used in high blood pressure. In fact, there are more than 50 antibiotics today also that we are using, which have been inspired directly or indirectly by our traditional knowledge of our floristic biodiversity or traditional medical system. Today, these antibiotics or medicines are commercialized. They may be chemically synthesized, but they are based on the traditional wisdom about biodiversity. So it is not only to preserve the biodiversity, it is also important to preserve the traditional knowledge and traditional wisdom of biodiversity because it may come handy at any point in time as we are progressing with development and with newer issues about health and environment. Now, the future economic value of a species is very important to appreciate this point that even if a species is today screened thoroughly in our laboratories and it has been found that this species is of not much of medicinal value, still are not of much value to the human beings. Still, this species needs to be conserved because in future we may be facing a new disease, we may be facing a new problem for which this particular species may be a solution. Therefore, it's important to preserve everything, to conserve everything without attaching any value judgment to its utility. Now, an extremely important aspect of the screening program for plant species is the preservation of natural plant communities, especially the rich tropical forests, so that they can be eventually investigated. It's really surprising that even at this stage of knowledge, all these species have not been even screened. In fact, only 14% of the species that we have actually been named and identified. So this is the level of ignorance and this is the rate at which the biodiversity is being lost. This is really alarming and serious action is required. Now, even the fauna is very important from the point of view of medicine. As we know, a number of medicines are derived from animals, derived from fauna. There are many medical systems which depend on fauna. In fact, a number of animals are used in medical research, like guinea pigs, like rats, and like pigs and all. So it's important, like frogs. So it's important that we preserve fauna because a lot of our medical investigation also depends on this. Even venoms which are derived from nature are medicines and they are used in many instances. Now let's come to the food resources. What is the importance of this biodiversity? Why should we be preserving the gene pool? And the government and the scientific community, they are all seriously concerned about this issue. Because even at this stage, our dependence on biodiversity for food is confined to a very narrow band of the diversity. The point that I'm making is that there's a very narrow band of species diversity which provides us food that we are eating. And if this narrow band gets adversely affected by the climate change, then in fact we will be facing serious issues of hunger and nutrition. For example, even today, about 3,000 plant species, which is only 1% of the total floristic diversity, in fact, is giving us major food, and only 150 or so species have been grown commercially in today. Most of the species have not even been grown commercially. There are three principal species, or the families to which these families belong, to these species belong. There are three species belonging to the family of grasses, rice, wheat, and corn, which are major. They are so important that over half of Earth's total cropland is devoted to them. Now, in one way it is good, but in another way it is not so good because our dependence is on a very, very narrow biodiversity gene pool, and all this is getting influenced adversely by climate change situation. There are other 20 groups of plants which gives fruits, which gives pulses, legumes, and so many things, and that's all. These are the main bulwark between mankind and starvation. If something happens to this narrow zone or the narrow bandwidth of biodiversity or the floristic diversity, then we will be facing a serious hunger issue. Now, the future food is in fact the plant diversity which is conserved today. The plants of special habitats are important now. The scientists are now looking for plants growing in the wild, growing in desert, growing in coast, estuaries, etc., so that their gene can be used, their gene can be conserved for provide food and nutrition in future. If the still unexploited species are wiped out, suppose the humanity will be limited to what it is using now. There is special relevance this is a special relevance in the context of climate change that we have to preserve all these species. Now, similarly, the animal food also, a large population actually depends for its food on the animal protein. And our dependence on the animal is also equally narrow so far as the frequency band of the species is concerned. So we need to conserve both the flora as well as fauna. Now, the agriculture sector is facing serious issues about biodiversity conservation. The, the increasing temperature, changing precipitation, and changing the extreme weather events and the reductions in the water availability, these are serious issues which are causing reduction in agriculture and horticulture productivity. They are disrupting our food availability. The reduction in access to food, they affect the food quality. In fact, there is a serious concern that tomorrow we may have enough food, but we may not have enough nutrition. So now there is a concern about having enough nutrition. There is a renewed concern about new types of crop pathogens which are driven by the climate change issues. And this is also affecting the animal husbandry or dairy products and so many other things. There's a fear for diminishing genetic base for the food is really rare. Really rare. And therefore, even the nations have called for the climate resilient agriculture now. So we have to go for agriculture crops which take less water, which can sustain climate changes, and which can really withstand new pathogens. The climate change, water crisis, and agriculture. These are the three things which are going to be very important for the agriculture biodiversity. We need to conserve the gene pool for food security. We have to study and preserve the wild varieties. It's very important. We have to go for organic and nature farming, because in the organic and nature farming, we take care of soil fauna, we take care of microorganisms, which are the building block of life for us. And the issues of course, with all these, the food security is facing the serious issue of population growth as well. Now, when we talk about biodiversity, when you talk about biodiversity, there is often a concern as to we only talk ecologically, we only talk qualitatively. We really don't talk quantitatively. There are a number of think tanks in the world, which are really doing a great job. Now, a number of organizations are developing maps for indicating the ecological footprint. One of the organizations doing very good work on this is the Footprint Network organization, and I really follow this organization. And they have come up with a map which shows that what is the ecological footprint. Ecological footprint basically indicates the human impact on the ecology. What is the extent of our impact on our ecosystems? The bright red areas are those areas which are having serious ecological impacts, and the green areas are those areas where still the ecological footprint is not that serious. They are slightly comfortable. Now, this kind of exercise has been done for different countries also, and there is the ecological footprint versus the biological capacity. There have been quantitative measurements about the biological capacity that a nation has, or an ecosystem has, or a landscape has. And for India, this exercise was done in 2012. In India, the total ecological footprint, which is the negative parameter, was about which was about 1.2 global hectares. The unit for this is global hectare, and the biodiversity, the biocapacity per capita was only 0.5. That means in 2012 only, we were facing a ecological or a biodiversity deficit of zero point 0.7, which is huge. If we see that our total biological capacity is only 0.5, and we are at a deficit of 0.7, and if we compare this, we can appreciate that we are already facing a huge deficit. Now, the basic issue of biodiversity is in fact the struggle for space. We are really seeing this, the different species are struggling for space here, there, and everywhere. India is a country which is only 2% of the world's land, but we are supporting 16% of world's population and 14% of world's livestock. But I have not yet talked about biodiversity. If we see the map of biodiversity of India, we are one of the 12 mega biodiversity nations, and therefore we have a great responsibility on our shoulders. But we have hardly any space. We are having sanctuaries and national parks and protected areas, but we need land for roads, we need land for townships, we need land for industries, and the struggle for space is going on. We have to resolve this as soon as possible, because in addition to the human population, in addition to the cattle population, there is a huge population of wild species, which we are very proud of, but they are all facing the struggle for space. Now, the vanishing biodiversity is really struggling everywhere, and I've just noted certain points here. Because of the paucity of time, I'll just go quickly through the presentation. The man-animal conflict is at its peak, in spite of the great efforts by the government, by the local people. We see all kinds of illegal activities related to wildlife taking place everywhere. These are the issues of man-animal conflict. Largely, these are all outcomes of the struggle for space between the biodiversity and the human beings. Now, these are the issues which are emerging because of the conflict between conservation and development. We have to come up with technology, we have to come up with development ideas, development strategies, where conservation and development can really go together. And that only will be sustainable development. Some think tanks have also tried to, and I quoted the source here, some think tanks have also tried to draw a scenario as to what is going to happen to our existence. And some people say that the biodiversity will be totally lost by 2050. But then a number of good things are also started happening. And the nature of the curve is slightly changing, and it is slightly reversely flattening. And if things go well, probably we may be able to reverse, although most of the scientists are quite pessimistic about it. The recent coronavirus invasion has shown that if we can ensure our absence, if we can have low carbon lifestyle, then the nature and the biodiversity is very resilient, and the biodiversity can really spring back. We have seen a number of such efforts. I'll just put one or two efforts which are going on globally. The IG biodiversity targets, we all know about them, and there were a number of targets and number of goals. And India also has 12 targets matching with the IG, which are international targets for biodiversity. But the sad part of this is that the targets were to be achieved by 2020. We are already in 2020, and it's anybody's guess whether we have achieved the targets or not. However, these are the goals and these are the targets which we needed to achieve by 2020. It was our international commitment, and our country did come up with a strategic biodiversity plan, and they tried to match up the action points of the biodiversity action plan and the targets of the IG goals. And a number of good things about biodiversity is happening. There's a growing awareness about biodiversity. There is a growing feeling that that today the most important issue to be studied seriously is biodiversity, because the biodiversity is the ultimate test for sustainable development. Now, the Sustainable Development Goals have also been matched with the National Biodiversity Target at the national level, and a number of programs have already been started at the state levels and also at the central level. We all know that we have a Biodiversity Authority at the state level and the National Biodiversity Authority at the central level, which regulates the use of biodiversity, and it has come up with brilliant ideas like people's biodiversity registers at the village level, and Gujarat is one state which is doing very well so far as maintaining people's biodiversity register and creating awareness about the biodiversity in local people. Now, some organizations, and I've taken it from the Millennium Ecosystem Report, and they have tried to indicate the drivers and their effect on various types of habitats. The vertical arrows show that the drivers are having an increased impact, and the red color shows that the impact on different issues and different habitats, different factors and different habitats is really very serious. And this map will see that most of the blocks are red and most of the arrows are pointing upwards, which means that the situation in most of the sectors is really alarming so far as biodiversity is concerned. Now, recently we had, and I just have one or two slides, recently we had the great human tragedy in the form of coronavirus attack. It was really sad. It's a very sad phase of humanity that we are going through. Many people have lost their lives, and it's a very serious. People have lost their jobs, people have lost their livelihood issues, and there's all kinds of chaos everywhere. But this has taught us certain things which we should not forget. This is a rare event in our history. Now, there are many reports we have seen recently, there are many video clippings on social media that tells us that due to our absence, a number of biodiversity is now available freely. A number of wild species are seen moving around on the roads and going here, there, and everywhere. Now, this shows that our understanding of nature is really too little. We never knew that there's so much of biodiversity around us, and they were simply awaiting this lockdown. They were simply awaiting our absence so that they can come out and enjoy some freedom. Second thing is this, that the nature has great intrinsic capacities to regenerate itself. Nature, if it is left to itself, can regenerate and can still regenerate, and this gives us little hope. Our herbal treasures and herbal friendly lives may support our health where no modern medicine is around, and this is what is happening in India in a big way. Can we ensure our plant absence to bring our footprint below the biocapacity of our natural ecosystem. And if we start thinking about this, then we feel that our future actually lies in our past. Can we really bring down our lifestyle to the low carbon lifestyles of the pre-industrial revolution era? If we can do that, I'm not saying that we can go back to the pre-industrial revolution. I'm saying that can we have our lifestyle with low carbon? Can we have our lifestyle with low pollution, low emission, so that our lifestyle is low carbon and our carbon footprint is really reduced? Then only we can have some chance of surviving and some chance of sustainable development. And in this, I feel that, and I urge the government also to seriously work for bringing in policies and lifestyles to definitely move towards low carbon lifestyle. We are opening up the industries, we are opening up the markets, we are opening up, that's good. But there has to be serious policy decisions, serious learnings from the corona virus attack, and we should really go for low carbon lifestyles, particularly in the sector of transport, particularly in the sector of energy, to alternative energy and non-fossil fuel energies, and all those things. We need to be extremely serious about these things. Now, these are the references I have put here, and in the end, I'll say that the path ahead is the massive people's participation, dynamic policy reviews and reforms, developing people's stakes in conservation. I mean, the conservation, the ecology has to make economic sense, and therefore, if people's stakes are built up with conservation, then conservation will take off, still taking off. Smart management of man-animal conflicts, because of the conflict of space, there is a man-animal conflict which needs to be managed smartly. The circular economy, can we make money out of pollutants? Can we make money out of pollution? Can we make money through recycle, reuse, restore? Climate proofing of all development programs, balancing the economic, environment and biodiversity, environmental justice for all, the present generation as well as the future generation. And therefore, let's join hands and support the biota in its struggle. Then only we can go for real sustainable development. And I end here with again thanking the organizer, particularly the Climate Change Department, Mr. Haider and Jada, for giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts with all of you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Pandey sir, for your very comprehensive presentation and very enlightened subject of biodiversity. So we are very thankful to you, Pandey sir, for making time for us and having with us and giving us such a nice presentation. We will take a question and answer in the last part of the webinar. We are equally thankful to Professor Shukla. Professor Shukla is co-chair of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, and he is also heading the Global Center for Environment and Energy at Ahmedabad University. Sir, we are very thankful you for agreeing to be here with us today on the World Environment Day. Sir will deliver his presentation on climate change mitigation, system transformation for global warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade. So now I request Purvi to share the screen of Sir, and I will request Professor Shukla to kindly start his address.
Purvi, can you put the presentation?
Yes, we are able to see the presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Purvi, for putting this presentation. Let me thank you for this the calling me for this very important presentation as such. And I think I want to put my presentation from the angle of how the policy relevant information can be produced, which can then be used by the policymakers. And so I'm talking today in this presentation at an interface of the policymakers, and the science as such. And so at any point of time, if you have some question or something, please note it down, and I will try my best to later on uh, provide an answer. So in this presentation, well, of course, let me start by first thanking the Gujarat government and especially the Principal Secretary, Mr. Haider, for giving me this opportunity. And I mean, I'm representing the government of India in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change as an elected member. And so this is giving me an opportunity to bring back all the scientific lessons that we have on the climate change and back and put before you so that you can keep on also advising us into how do we now prepare best of the science and what the policymakers are looking forward to from the scientists. I just say that there is one motto which the IPCC is required to follow is that all the science that we do is policy relevant. It's not policy prescriptive. And so I'm going to present today some questions which are on the mind of the policymakers and the best answers the way we are trying to give right now. So we will, as we keep on moving, you can note down your questions if you have some. Also, this presentation that I'm giving is also made jointly with my other co-chair, Professor James Key at the Imperial College London. And the two of us are the ones who are working with the mitigation of the climate change. The next slide, please. Can you change the slide? Yeah, okay. So very quickly, I will show you that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, well, as the name says, it's an intergovernmental panel. It's established by now and currently already 197 countries are the members, which practically is the entire, almost everybody in the world now covered under the IPCC's umbrella of science. Okay? And once this problem was recognized of the climate change, the governments moved very quickly, and in 1998 they formed the IPCC under the joint establishment of the World Meteorological Organization and United Nations Environment Program. And then since then, the IPCC has been producing the reports after reports, and the most recent reports, which are under the seventh and the sixth sun cycle of the IPCC's assessment of the climate change, are just coming out, and I will talk a little more about that shortly. So the IPCC, it's questions that policymakers sometimes ask us, and even scientists ask us, and that we want to provide some answers. So one question that has been coming out now from the side of the policymakers in a very short time, they wanted that in the global climate change, where are we now? Where meaning that how far the warming is already happening. I can give you an answer to this question. Okay. Can you just take the slide? Okay, so we are now, let's tell you that this is one of the most recent report of the IPCC, very well known as the 1.5 degree warming report. And this report's answer to this question, that where are we now in the warming in the world, is that since the pre-industrial times, human activities have caused approximately 1 degree centigrade of global warming. So there is of course uncertainty around this number. So in the report you will find the uncertainty at 0.8 to 1.2 degrees centigrade, but on an average the number is at, to meaning that actually that over about 150 odd years back, whatever was the climate, what we are saying is that on average now there is a warming which is about 1 degree centigrade, or now this will bring some further questions, that will come to the policymakers who go us. So one was to ask that at current rate, what would happen, meaning that if we continue to now keep on emitting the greenhouse gases, what would happen? So the answer that the report would give is that at current rate would be from the between 2030 and 2050. Meaning that if you continue to emissions, you can do it in parts. And then if you look at the harvest time we have to big part of is that's the target to that there will be compared between 2030 and 2015. I mean, that could be never given answer that on the 2035 or on the month of June, this is not happening. Taking into account all the uncertainty that will come about, that this assessment is that well, 1.5 degrees is reaching about 20, 30 years or something. So, I will further do that, why is numbers like 1.5 degrees? Right, so the next point that attention alone would not be something that would come forward to we continue the way that we were doing it in the past, and we have issued the emissions of greenhouse gases. Well, that there are emissions are not something which is not going to decide. Emissions, the other emissions are already lying in the atmosphere, those gases which have the greenhouse gases have been found in the atmosphere. And so we to this answer that you connect with that emissions would be account for that, whether the discipline knows thing but that it will also be contributing to act with bombing. And then only we are seeing the consequences for people, nature, and livelihood. That's an observation which we have made, that well, it's not that the number is about 1 degree or something like that. The people have started feeling that change, and I'll talk a little more about that as we go. Purvi, can we go to the next slide? All right, so then the earlier slide was about the warming as such. Here we were talking about the emissions. So the question that the policymakers have asked to us was that well, if we have the Paris Agreement, and the countries are giving under the Paris Agreement, they are receiving now the countries how much that the countries want to give their own commitments, etc. Right? So the aggregate of that now, if we do, then the answer from the IPCC has been that well, in 2030. Those commitments that started with the Paris Agreement, finally the current NDCs, which are coming, have their life till 2030. And so till 2030, or if you take the year of 2030, 52 to 58 gigaton or the billion ton of carbon dioxide per year that will be declined, meaning that well, if we continue to go by the current way of doing working, and that we consider that the Paris Agreement is relatively, not only accepted actually that, but also duly implemented by the governments who are giving their own commitments, then then we still would have every year something of the order of about in 2030, 52 to 58 gigaton of carbon dioxide. So the Paris Agreement is not really taking you towards some kind of a zero emission or something. In fact, under the current architecture of the Paris Agreement, that what the numbers that we're getting, the assessment is that the emissions will still continue under the Paris Agreement. Uh, so the next bullet is about the idea that the pathway will reflect these ambitions. Because the countries are also showing some ambitions, as Mr. Haider has showed also the states like Gujarat and also the country also has the NDCs. And so, given their ambitions which are coming out, what would be the numbers which would be there, and would that be adequate? Well, what we again finding is that these ambitions would not limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees, because that 52 to 58 gigaton, if that is going to be emitted or something, then well, we cannot have a stabilization at 1.5 degrees. As such, so that's the answer from the IPCC and basically the scientists to the policymakers. Actually, that is, the policymakers are neutral. Actually, that is, they want to get that information. They don't want an advice from us. Actually, the scientists also. But they will do the best for the people. What is the best actually for everything else? Actually, that is, they ask us actually and say that can you give me this information or something that is in a scientific way. Could we next slide? Right, so then the next question is coming that the first one I put was that, well, what's the warming happening and all that. Okay? Then this is where do we want to go? Why 1.5 degrees over 2 degrees centigrade? And many people, when we discuss actually that, I'm not saying only the policymakers, but also in the normal people, the idea that if there is a difference of 1.5 centigrade and 2 degrees centigrade, half degree, what does a half degree matter? In environment, we are anyway, let's say, letting that temperature to rise up to 2 degrees. But as such, is 1.2 degrees going to make any difference? And so this is an answer that I'm getting from you, which is again from the two very important reports of the IPCC. The one report which is on the climate change and land, and another one is the climate change and the oceans and cryosphere. And so this, so we try to answer this question that well, why do we say that? Are we saying that 1.5 degree is better compared to 2 degrees centigrade as such? And so, can we move to the next slide? Right. So in this case, there are four very crucial bulleted points. And so the first is that the 1.5 degree versus 2 degree warming. That there is some difference, and so what we are saying is that the climate change is already affecting people, as we said. I said in the previous slide, a couple of slides back, that 1.5 C, if it's reaching to something, people are feeling at 1 degree, which is already happened now. We are also now discovering some new effects of that 1 degree, which has come. Now that we are trying to limit at 1.5 degrees. As such, now, so far as the Paris Agreement is concerned, the Paris Agreement is used to terminology of well below 2 degrees centigrade. But then going towards 1.5. As such, the ultimate ambition of the policymakers globally is to go to 1.5. But that they can live with the 2 degrees centigrade as such. And so this question to which our answer is that actually that there is a big difference between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees, and which I'll show you very quickly. So the limiting global warming at 1.5 C is not impossible, but would require unprecedented transitions in all aspects of society. And so this is that as we go into the presentation, I'll show a little more that well, the limiting the global warming to 1.5 is not impossible. It's still possible. We can start reducing the emissions very quickly, and then we may not have to pass through the phase of accidents of the 1.5 degrees as such. But if that doesn't happen or something actually that, then maybe in the next slide I'll show that what is the further answer on that. And so the third bullet is that there are clear benefits to keeping warming to 1.5 C rather than 2 degrees centigrade. And so these benefits are the ones in the next slides I'll show you. And limiting warming to 1.5 degree centigrade can contribute to achieving other world goals. If you take the sentence in a flip-flop way or something, actually, that if you flip the sentence, it would essentially is saying that 1.5 degree C would be very important for achieving the other world goals. Climate change is one goal under the SDGs, goal number 13, etc. But that keeping the number at 1.5 would also help a lot of other the goals, etc. Purvi, can we move to the next? All right, so I'm just coming now to this a further answer on that, and of course, if your own computers are nearby, you can see that everything there. But this, the next slides also is essentially to show that what the science says. And so the first slide says that the insects, which are vital for pollination of crops and plants, are likely to lose half their habitat at 1.5 degrees. But if this becomes twice at 2 degrees centigrade, meaning that actually that these insects and which are vital for pollinations of crops, etc. actually at 1.5 degrees they will have also some loss of habitats. But if you allow up to 2 degrees actually that they will lose 2 times as compared to what the impact which will come in this condition. Next slide, please. And so the other is that well, in this case actually that the impact of 1.5 versus 2 degrees in which is very interesting actually that well the completely bare of the sea ice, if you consider that a period in the Arctic Ocean, that where it is completely bare of the sea ice in summer, well the report of 1.5 shows that well only the once in a century with a 1.5 degree increase there would be the likelihood of the ocean, the sea ice remaining completely open actually that day. But on the under 2 degrees centigrade, meaning that if you permit a little more warming or something that day, then this increases to about 10 times. So every decade in that case, the Arctic animals and others will face this issue actually that, and this would mean that as the previous speaker was mentioning about biodiversity and all that, that this would be the new kind of impact which will be coming and will start affecting the local the biodiversity, etc. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the well-known there are discussions around this that the sea level rise which would happen. The only thing is that the accuracy reports assess the best of the literature and then tell you that how many people could be affected under 1.5 versus 2 degrees. So I'm not getting into the details of this, but that the basic answer is that you have a hazard of 6 million people if you still permit 2 degrees centigrade to happen. Yeah, but that if you just keep it at 1.5 degrees or something, you will have less 10 million less people being affected by the sea level rise. Next. Right, so this is, of course, the state. I think that many of the habitats which are there all over the world, they are on the coastal places and all that, and then this things like the droughts, storms, and extreme events. And the advantage with the IPCC is that we use the best of the literature as is available, but at the same time actually creating the new scientific scenarios, etc., at the instance of the requirements of the policymakers. And so some of the reasons have come from this, that well, there will be a sizable intensity improvement, storms and extreme weather events will increase substantially. Next slide. Right. So in this particular case, actually, that the case of this coral reef is there under a lot of discussion that, and it's very clear now by the various scientific studies and the assessment of the IPCC has said that well, at 1.5 degrees centigrade rise, about 70% coral reefs will die. But if you allow that temperature to go to 2 degrees or something, virtually all reefs will be lost. Next slide. Right, so this is like one of the very well-known chart which comes from the IPCC 1.5 report. And in this case, we are just doing a full assessment of the natural, managed and human systems and how they will be affected. And so this is a chart very well known as the burning embers chart. And that burning embers, that you can see that the first one is the warm water corals, as I was saying in the previous slide, would be very badly affected, and then at 2 degrees, when they will be completely more or less getting wiped out. To a different systems like this, what would be the impact of 1.5 versus 2 degrees? And most of the places that you can find that there are going to be more hazards at 1.5 compared to 2. Next slide, please. And so the question now is that we are trying to settle that question that well, there is the 1.5 and 2 degrees, and the answer is that has come from what the slide that I was showing was that well, there is a big difference. And so if you just do at 1.5, just a temperature stabilization and allow 2 degrees to let's say happen, then there are substantial losses which are coming, and especially in the communities which are fishing communities, many there, and of course where the biodiversity, the previous speakers have said some things also that. And so then the next question coming from the policymakers to the IPCC, that well, okay, it looks good that we should now not go beyond 1.5 or something. The question is that how do we reach there? And then what would be the emission pathways? Because ultimately the temperature increases because underneath the emissions are changing. And so the question is that there are emissions pathways and system transitions. Because the answer that we find in a situation of this kind is that, especially in the emissions of the energy and all that you may require complete systemic change. For example, the coal system that we have a lot in India, and the thing, but we have not used a lot of coal still lying down in the ground. So the question there is that we cannot leave these as the standard assets. The millions of people, their jobs are at stake in this. And so, but this question was asking, okay, how do we still go ahead and do that? So this part is answered actually by the people, the experts on the climate change who are coming from the economics and this side actually, that from the previous guys who are answering some of the questions to the policymakers was where the scientists, etc. Next slide, please. Next slide. All right, so here the very clear answer that we gave to the policymaker is that for limiting to 1.5 degrees centigrade, the carbon dioxide emissions fall by about 45%, meaning that in 2030, what we were talking about, what emissions would be there, you will have to have almost half of that if you want to reach towards the 1.5 degrees. If the emissions keep on increasing, then there is no way you can have the warming of 1.5, the warming will become more than 1.5. So this is an answer to this, in which case actually that the answer we had also put the CO2 emissions would need to reach a net zero. And I think at some other point I want to get into the discussions on that, but this is the new terminology which are coming under the Paris Agreement. This is that how do we have the countries committing something and all that, but we see that can be moved towards the net zero or something, etc. And so every country would have the mechanisms by which their emissions are net zero, and so globally then the emissions will come out like that. Now that's a bit an ideal picture or something, but sometimes the policymakers ask that, okay, if I want to do that, well, what's your answer or something, And then the last bullet there is that reducing non-CO2 emissions would have a direct. So generally, when we talk about the emission, people only think about the carbon dioxide emission, but then there are emissions of the methane, which are also greenhouse gas, the N2O, and all that. So there's several, the whole basket of the gases are that. Okay? And then the question is that actually that well, how do you handle that? And of course, there could be, in some cases, there could be immediate health benefits, or because there could be some of the greenhouse gases could also have the direct respiratory issues and all that. Next slide, please. Right, so this again says on the policymakers that the greenhouse gas emission pathways which we want to look at for the future, limiting the warming to 1.5 would require very deep emission cuts in all sectors, a range of technologies, including the new ones like renewables and others, which are now increasing, etc., behavioral changes, and increased investment in low carbon options, etc. Next slide, please. Right, so now I'm coming to another presentation, but it's a part of the same presentation, but this, that, well, how do we now mitigate this green, the greenhouse gas emissions? And so when we say the mitigating greenhouse gas emissions, I was already talking about the emission reductions that we were talking about. However, now the Paris Agreement has also put this, that you can do any activity, you can do all those things actually the Paris Agreement. However, it should be with also an intention that which we are going to strengthen the global response in the context of sustainable development and efforts to eradicate poverty. You don't want to do any actions in a way such that it will increase the poverty or it would affect the sustainability as such, And so I'm just giving you a very quick example like that and then close the presentation. Can we move to the next slide, please? Right, so this is the goals. I want to spend time on that. Climate action goal 13 connects with everything else, and that's the way we look at it in the IPCC reports as such. But bringing that information back to the policymakers in the policy language actually that not in the language of science, science or something like that. Although the best of the science is used for answering those questions actually. Next slide, please. So this is one very quick example actually that and for the policymakers, we use that policymakers are smart people actually that, but we can also give them a very simple way of answering this thing that. So generally the fossil fuels are the ones which first come to mind when we talk about the greenhouse gases and all that, and what kind of energy that we are using. Now from the historical that at the times when the people started using this greenhouse, the fossil fuels, etc., that this figure very simply shows that this is about a 5 years old figure actually, but the numbers will not change over that the coal and oil and gas, the blue part is the projected baseline emission, all the emissions that we can say that actually that we can project, which would come out because we continue to use that. So let's say you take coal, and the blue part is how much coal globally we are going to use, etc. And then so this is not only for 1 year or something actually, but cumulative for some period. And then so the number comes out to be this a kind of blue level, which is the carbon stock of the gigaton of CO2 of 2,500 or something like that. But if you put all that together, the final thing what happens is that somebody asks the question, how much is the fossil fuel still lying under the ground? And so you can just find that these yellowish bars which we have are the ones which are dominant ones, meaning that there is still a lot of fossil fuels under the ground. And then wherever that is there, some people will try to dig it out because they need whatever are the money out of it or whatever it is and all that actually for their own survival thing. And so it's not that the coal, oil and gas is just going to get out very soon. There is a lot of that lying under the ground. Next slide. Next slide, please. Will you get a change to the next slide? Thanks, Movik. So as you can, I mean, I just move very quickly that from the previous thing that I was showing now, the question that we are putting is that well, if we have to now make the investments, that because there are a lot of now the coal down there under the ground actually but we also have the wind and other things which are good things also so the question that we want to answer is that the substantial reduction in emission would require the change in the investment plans. So long as we keep on investing in the coal mines, well, the coal is not going to go out. And so if you aspire to reduce those emissions, then well, you can also start reducing the investments in these sectors. And so let's say the energy, and also then use a better sector like energy efficiency. It would require less of the fuel. Make most of your investment in that direction. Do it in the renewables. Maybe nuclear. Sometimes that nuclear always remains under the discussion, and the policymakers just want from IPCC and other scientific bodies that kind of an information that broadly you can say that, but then that will be for the policymakers to decide on nuclear, because it's not necessarily the full competition is the one which is working there. Next slide. All right, so this essentially means from the previous slide that we would have the emission mitigation measures where you could have the more efficient use of energy, greater use of low carbon and no carbon energy, improved carbon sinks, and then change of lifestyles and behavioral changes. A lot of these are connected with the SDGs. Also, our next set of reports which will come out in over the next 1.5 to 2 years period are going to get into huge details of what kind of technologies which will be winning in over the next 10 years, which is the Paris Agreement period, and going to 2050, and also going up all the way to 2100. Next slide, please. Alright, so on this slide, essentially the message is very simple actually, that well, when you do the climate action, for example, let's say you reduce the coal, or you can have the coal but used with some attachments actually that where the sulfur dioxide and other things doesn't go up, said that. So that's the good news that well, while we are trying to solve the problem of the climate change and the sustainable development goals could win a bit better actually and so it is the sulfurization and other things, the sulfur emissions which are on the PM10 especially which are there, where you can get a bit of a free ride for reducing these the PM10 and the sulfur dioxide, etc. actually that relatively for free. Next. Alright, so I just come again. I don't want to, because in the ministry actually there are people who are a lot more knowledgeable compared to me maybe on this. But if we look at the discussion on this, that India's NDCs have a lot of things. These are like the big topics. I just put under the green. I think that the 33 to 35% of the by 2030 from 2001 level. This is the target which is put actually reducing emission intensity of GDP. And maybe I think India is one of the only country which has put it in that way. But it's a very interesting target. Yeah. The other is the non-fossil fuel-based electricity, like the India's push on the renewable energy, etc., is also deriving from here. And then the enhancing the carbon sink through additional forests. This is a very, very important another a goal that we have put in all that. And so together that this will come out to be a very winning a solution for India as such. And so I think this is what the India's policymakers with the handshake with the India scientists and others have come out with this, and it's a great a kind of outcome from these policymakers and the scientists working together. Next, please. Right, so this I'm going to take this back home actually, that this is from the ministry, but the important thing is that they have been aligning this with the National Action Plan and at the national level. And and the state testing that way. And then the question would be that well, how do we get a little more into detail? How do we expand it and all that? And I think I would say in Gujarat, everything is in good hands to take this the climate change action. So, the last and the final slide, Purvi. All right, so this is I'm just closing with that. Well, these are the three reports which have just come in last 1.5 years from the IPCC. The most cited ones in the literature. Said that only thing is that the good news there is that you can get it for free from the IPCC website. You can download it, and so we're very happy that you can make use of that. And let me thank again the ministry and all of you for calling me again on that, and we wish that under your guidance, the India's policy making will be moving forward further. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Shukla, for your comprehensive presentation on climate change mitigation and related aspects, and the with the background of the IPCC reports and IPCC findings. We have questions from many participants. If Dr. Vijay Kumar Srivastav is available, he has sent some questions. So I will request him to raise his question. Professor Vijay Kumar Srivastav.
His mic is muted.
Okay. Then we can have a question from Miss Daksha Vaja. Actually, Daksha Vaja's question is about yeah. Daksha Vaja, can you please speak? Shaurya Patel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a question for Professor Pandey. So companies like Walmart have patented autonomous bee drones that helps in pollination process, while the natural bee population is extremely friendly. So how do companies invest or adapt or integrate their portfolios to biodiversity impact?
Hello, is that question to me?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah,
It was to you.
I'm not able to hear you very properly. Uh, can you repeat your question?
Yeah. So for example, companies like Walmart have patented autonomous bee drones that helps in pollination process, while
Right.
national population is extremely threatened. So how do companies and industry adapt or integrate their portfolios to biodiversity impact?
Okay, now the case that you are referring to is basically addressing the problem of pollinators. Now, because of climate change, because of habitat loss, the pollinator population is going down actually in many contexts. So a number of companies have come up and they raise the pollinators. Pollinators are usually insects like bees and all. Usually they are bees, but there could be some other creatures as well. And they release it. Usually this is to support agriculture crops and all. So this in this way they are trying to sort of fill in the gap which the nature has created because of the loss to nature due to climate changes and habitat losses and other things. So this is an action they are doing, which is going to, as they feel that this is going to help the productivity of the crops or the productivity of trees and all. So this is what it is. So far as the nature of work is concerned, they can very well integrate it with the biodiversity if they are not sort of collecting the pollinators from the wild or sort of violating any rules in collecting. They're raising the pollinators under proper license, and if they're raising the pollinators with due care and they're using it, then it's fine. Does that answer your question?
So part of it, yes. So I was just thinking, if I have a company, how do I integrate biodiversity impact? One way we usually use EIA, environmental impact assessment, but what other methods that we can use to understand the impact?
Okay, now since you are dealing with the biological community and you are going to release it, then there has to be a concern about the type of species that you are releasing, because when you are releasing pollinators, the pollinators you are not taking it back, no. So you are releasing the pollinators, then the pollinators will be in the wild. They will have to survive for their entire life cycle. So you have to take care of all those things. These require environmental impact studies, and the experts on biodiversity can easily do that as to what would be the adverse impact of releasing pollinators artificially to a system, and the pollinators have to survive, there. So they're moving around here and there. So there has to be an environmental impact assessment for this, a biological impact assessment for this, because you are releasing a biological organism into a system. So there has to be usual studies and usual examination on that. Okay. Hello.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Shweta, can I ask a question to Professor Shukla, please?
Please go ahead. Whoever is speaking here.
Yes. Good afternoon, Professor Shukla. This is Panagiotis Karamanos from the IUC project. I wanted to ask you, given the developments with COVID-19, whether you think that state or national initiatives to address COVID-19 can also help to reduce the impacts of climate change, or whether there will be a conflict over there.
Well, this is a kind of question. I think probably because this is a very short term right now that learning that we have, and also the phenomena is short term. So far as the IPCC is concerned, actually, that one thing IPCC will have to have is that a sizable literature to assess it. No. So now in this case, as I was saying that the three other major reports of the IPCC are coming to closure over the next 1.5 year period. Yeah. The current the numbers which are some the let's say the literature which is coming out is still actually relatively quite speculative, and that is not something actually that because that we go there actually that we are providing the information back to the policymakers, not really other use as such. And so I would say that well, the system now requires to gear up to take up the problem of this COVID-19, etc. But I think at the best actually that if I can also give a positive answer is that we have started preparing what we might call actually that a cross-chapter boxes on this to inform policymakers actually. Yeah, but not really that we would wait for some 500 papers, 1,000 papers or something because our reports are coming next would not mean that in the next cycle this could be taken up as an important subject or something actually. That now, of course, probably it may not be a satisfactory answer, but it may not. But I would say that this is the best answer that I can give.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dr. Panagiotis, you have one question from Ms. Daksha Vaja. Ms. Daksha Vaja, you can ask your question.
Good afternoon, everyone, all the panelists. I am very thankful to all of you to having giving such an enlightening presentation. I have a query regarding the EU program which has been implementing in 8 cities. Now, since the city of Baroda already has a plan ready for biodiversity conservation for the river Vishwamitra that flows to the city, there are some development which has already been taken place by the government of Gujarat, but we don't see any headway regarding this. And the Community Science Center already has a 3-tier action plan for the entire riverbed. So, is it possible that the 8-city program can be included for the river and the biodiversity conservation as well?
Okay, this was yes, yes. Well, let me just mention two things which I think are relevant to this question. First of all, Baroda is one of the 8 cities that have committed to the Global Covenant of Mayors and actually is a well-advanced city and very active in that respect. As I indicated during my presentation, we are developing and contributing to the development of 8 climate action plans, and one of them is the one for Baroda. So whatever plan is already there, including the biodiversity plan, will be incorporated in the climate action plan, and whatever actions have already been taken, either at the study level or at the actual implementation level, will be accordingly incorporated. Whether now any biodiversity plan or initiative can be included in the program, I would say that this could be a possibility in the next phase of the program that starts in 2021, depending on the themes that will be decided. The International Urban and Regional Cooperation will start in 2021 and it will last for approximately 3 years. And will focus on cities that, including Indian cities that have shown a strong interest and strong commitment in the specific areas, including possibly biodiversity. So if the theme of the cooperation is included, then whatever Baroda has done can be definitely assessed and, if possible, incorporated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Panagiotis. Actually, we have many questions from various attendees, Mr. Naresh Thakur, Mr. Meet Shah, Supratim Das Gupta, Kaushik Mehta, Vaibhav Chaturvedi. But due to paucity of the time, we will not be able to address all those questions right here on this platform. But definitely, we have the questions in our chat box, so we'll address them offline. So now, towards the end of this webinar, I will request Mr. Mukesh Shah, Joint Secretary, Climate Change Department, to give vote of thanks.
तो सक्सेसफुली वेबिनार में पार्टिसिपेट करने के लिए प्रिंसिपल सेक्रेटरी हैदर सर, डायरेक्टर्स विजय शाह सर, डॉक्टर पैनाजोटिस सर, पांडे सर और शुक्ला सर और सभी पार्टिसिपेंट का हम क्लाइमेट चेंज डिपार्टमेंट की ओर से शुक्रिया अदा करते हैं। जय हिंद।
Thank you.